Hello, this is Mouse Gunner, and welcome to Blood Bowl 2. This video will start a series of tutorials covering the rules and strategy of playing Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is quite complex and it can be daunting for a new player. As a result, I'll be breaking up different aspects of gameplay into separate videos. This video will be covering the basics of playing Blood Bowl. To start off, we'll go ahead and go over the interface that you'll be presented with in the game. So starting off on the left side here, we have me, Mouse Gunner, and which team I'm controlling, which is the Albion Wanderers, which is a human team. Over on the right, we have the opposing player, which is going to be played by the AI in this particular instance. Just below that, you have a box that looks like it has a couple dice in it with a number. Now, the number represents how many team rerolls you have left for a half. We'll go over team rerolls a little bit later in the video. And just below that, we have how many turns are left in a half. Each half, there being 2, is divided into 8 turn segments for a total of 16 turns. In the middle here, we have which half it currently is, the score 0-0, as the game has just started, no one has scored, and what the weather is currently like, which is sunny. Weather can change throughout the course of the game, and it will have various effects. Now let's go over the phases of play. To start off, you'll have a coin toss. This coin toss will determine who gets to decide on receiving or kicking off the ball. I won the coin toss, and I decided to receive the ball. So the opposing player will be kicking it off to me, and I will start off on the offense. But when you talk about offense and defense, don't think of it in strict terms like what you have in American football. It's much more fluid and can transition from offense to defense and defense to offense very quickly throughout the course of play. With that being explained, the next phase is the setup phase. I will not be going over this in any detail, as I will be covering this in a separate video. It is a quite complex element in and of itself. But an important element to understand here is that each side has 11 players, although you can have a roster that includes more players than that. Only 11 players can be on the field at once, and that there is certain guidelines on how you set up your players to start play. With that being said, let's go ahead and go on to the next phase of play, which will be kicking off. Now, the opponent will kick off the ball to me, and after kicking off, there will be a random event that happens. Now, the random nature of this makes it so that we really don't know what's going to happen, and these elements will affect gameplay. Weather can change, a number of random effects can happen. So you can never really predict what's going to happen with each kickoff. Once that event has happened, the ball will go towards where the opposing player has determined he wants to kick it. And then it will be a scatter from there. If the ball is still in bounds at that point, it will bounce at least one square and fall in its resting spot. If it goes out of bounds or does not make it across the halfway mark of the pitch, this is an illegal play. It is what is termed a touchback, and I will get to determine which of my players gets to start with the ball. So they essentially start with the ball in their hands. This is a very good thing for you if you're receiving the ball, and a very bad thing for you if you're kicking it off. So try and make sure you kick the ball in bounds. It's very important. Okay, so let's go ahead and start play here. We'll confirm our setup, and at this point, the kickoff will happen. So there goes the ball. Here's the random effect. So cheering fans. The team is inspired by their fans cheering. Albion Wanderers get an extra team reroll this half. And that's pretty much the random effect. So that's a good effect for us. We get an extra team reroll. So there goes the ball. It actually landed directly on one of our players, and they caught it. So let's go ahead and pause here and talk about some elements going on right now. So if we look over at the left, we can see by this highlight which turn we're currently on and who is the active player. As you can see, on the opposing coach's side, no turn is highlighted. So not only are they not the active player, but they haven't yet taken their first turn. As we go through each turn and complete a turn, these numbers will start to be grayed out to show which turns we've completed, but also to show us which turn we'll be on when we are, again, the active player. So when it is the opposing coach's turn, they will be on their first turn because no number is grayed out. It will always go to the lowest number turn if none are grayed out. This is an important element of the strategy of gameplay, is the time management aspects. Knowing how many turns you have left to do a particular task and how many turns left your opponent has to do a task is a very important element of the strategy. Okay, so now let's talk about the different stats of any particular unit on your team. So I'm going to unpause it here, and we're going to look at a character's little sheet here. So if we click on him, you'll see his stats here. And there's going to be 4 total stats. You're going to have movement, strength, agility, and armor value. So let's go ahead and pause it again and discuss what each of those things mean. So the movement value is literally how many spaces, and the pitch is divided into spaces, how many spaces that character can move in a turn. Now you can usually move 2 spaces beyond that number in what's called going for it. And we'll discuss going for it a little bit more when we talk about movement itself. Then you have strength. This is used for blocks specifically. And again, we'll go over strength when we talk about blocks. You have agility value, which is used for dodging, as well as a number of other elements, for instance, picking up the ball, catching the ball as it gets kicked off to you, passing the ball, and so on, is affected by agility. Now, armor value is how resilient a player is. When you are knocked to the ground, your armor value will be checked. If your armor value doesn't succeed, if you fail the roll, your player will be injured in some way. Obviously, being injured is a bad thing, so the more resilient your player, the more resistant they are to injury. And that's pretty much all the stats that are involved in the game. So now let's talk about the different actions that players or units can do throughout the course of a turn. And I'll break these up into what I call unlimited actions and what I call limited actions. These are actions that can only be done once per turn. Now, the actions that you can do unlimited number of times are moving and throwing blocks. And one thing I should explain is that there are 2 elements that will stop or affect the course of play. The first element is what is called a turnover. The second element is what I call stoppage of play, but I think it's also called a down in the rule set. Now, a down or a stoppage of play will happen whenever a touchdown has occurred or whenever a half has ended. So this is not as a frequent of an occurrence, but every time there is a stoppage of play, you pretty much start the course of play just as we have done before, minus the coin toss. So you'll have a setup, somebody will kick off the ball, somebody will receive the ball, and so on. And that's exactly how the stoppage of play works. There are a number of other things that will happen when play has been stopped, but that's the important element, that touchdowns and the half ending will determine that. Now, after the initial coin toss, who gets the ball, who's going to be receiving the ball with any stoppage of play is pretty easy to figure out. With a touchdown, whoever scored the touchdown will be kicking it off, and whoever didn't score the touchdown will be receiving it. When the end of the half happens, whoever started with the ball in the first half will be kicking it off in the second half, and vice versa. So that's how the stoppages of play work. Now, turnovers result whenever a player, it is their turn and one of their units is knocked to the ground or they drop the ball. What happens when a turnover occurs is that their turn immediately ends. Doesn't matter if they still have players that haven't acted, their play immediately ends and it starts the next player's turn. So that is another very important element of strategy, is you really don't want to have a turnover when you still have a lot of players still active, still able to go. So you want to limit the possibility of a turnover until you've moved a lot of your other players already, so that it's not as big of a penalty. With that explained, let's go ahead and go over the actions here. We'll start with movement. And again, we'll just click on a player and you can kind of see how movement works. So if we click on this player, we can see exactly where he can move. Now he has a movement value of 7, so normally he could move 7 spaces. And we can see that by the red dashed line is the absolute limit of his movement. But this white line is the normal limit of his movement. Now these boxes with the dice are the extra spaces that he can go when he, quote unquote, goes for it. Now, these are spaces that are optional, and every time you enter one of these spaces, there's a random chance that your player will fall down. Now, you can reroll any bad result that you don't like with one of your team rerolls, but understand that you're only limited to one team reroll per turn, so only one failure can be rerolled. But in any case, if I did the go for it and I failed the roll, I would have an opportunity to re-roll that failure. If I failed again, at that point I could not re-roll anymore. Because a player has fallen to the ground, I would have a turnover and my turn would be over. So be careful when you do this. Now let's look at a couple other things that are going on when we click on our player and look at his movement. Now you'll notice a number of colored squares here, and they have numbers in them, -1, -2, etc. Now these determine tackle zones. So let's talk about tackle zones now. Tackle zones are any space that's adjacent to a particular unit. Both your players and the opposing players will have tackle zones. And this is another element that adds a lot of complexity to the game, is understanding where tackle zones fall and what effects they'll have on you. So in this instance, with the movement, we saw those colored squares. Those are going to show us where those tackle zones are. Why that is important is, once we've entered a tackle zone, we cannot leave a tackle zone without doing a dodge roll. Now, with a dodge roll, you have a chance that when you're dodging out of a tackle zone that you will fall. The opposing player trips you. And of course, again, if you fall, this will be a turnover. And you also have the chance of being injured when you fall as well. So that is another risk that you take. Now, whenever you enter a tackle zone, to dodge out of it, it is advisable, as again, if we start play here, if we were to move here, and I would just left click where I want to move, it would be advisable for me, if I were to then dodge out of his tackle zone. That gives me the best chance of success. So let's go ahead and select a player that can do this a little bit better. So if we click here, and then we click here, we'll see that it gives me a dodge percentage chance. This is how likely I will pass or succeed at the dodge. Now, if I tried to dodge into his tackle zone, though, you'll notice, actually, let's start over here. If I try and dodge into another one of his tackle zones, you'll notice that dodge chance has gone down. Well, that is because the tackle zones, by the number that is in their box, gives a modifier. Whereas if I were to dodge out of his tackle zone into an empty space, I no longer have that modifier, which increases my chance of succeeding. And that's pretty much more or less how dodging works. And movement in general. That being said, let's now talk about the other unlimited element of play, and this is blocking. Now, blocking I will cover in a separate video as well, because it is also quite complex. But essentially, how you block is with a player who is adjacent to an opposing player, you can then throw a block, which is a attacking move to either push him or knock him, push him out of the way or knock him down. So to demonstrate how a block works, and it's very important, this character cannot move for a normal block. They have to be stationary. This includes getting up from being knocked down. That counts as moving. Just getting up counts as moving. So you can't get up and then block somebody that's next to you as you have already moved. So to show this, I'm going to click a character that is adjacent to an enemy character. And if I click on, or just even hover over an opposing player, you will see a die hovering above them. Now this is how many dice I will roll if I throw that block. In this instance, we are matching our strength together. Because our two strength values are equal, which we see on the left side there, I only get to throw one die. If we go over here, we have a strength 5 character. Okay, in that case, we won't be outnumbered. Let's go ahead and even odds here. So let's move a character up into adjacency here. And he will do what is called giving an assist to the block. So now we see, as we hover over this unit, we have 2 dice. If we were to throw this block, we would get to roll 2 dice and choose which one we wanted. So let's go ahead and do it. So I'm getting +1 strength from this assist. Again, I'll go over assists with the block video, but let's go ahead and do this. So now we can see the 2 dice I rolled. I want to choose this one because it is the better result. After I've done that, I get to choose where he falls. And then I get to choose on whether I will follow him, as in go in the space that he was previously in, or stay where I am. Let's say I say stay where I am. Now he gets knocked down. He already had an armor check and everything to make sure that he didn't get injured. So that was already done automatically behind the scenes. He didn't get injured, he just fell down normally. How would you know if he was injured? Well, there are different results of an injury. That he could just be stunned, which means it takes him an extra turn to get up. If he was stunned, he would be on his stomach and there would be stars floating his head. So around his head. So you would know he's stunned. It will take him an extra turn. Then he will flip over. And then on his next turn, he can stand up normally. Now, standing up will consume, if I remember correctly, 3 movement points to do. And you do count as moving when you do it. If you're actually injured, well, another result you can have is being knocked out. If you're knocked out, you'll be removed from the pitch. And you'll go into, and you can even see this dugout here. There's a little bell, which is the symbol they use to denote being knocked out. Your player will be moved to this box, and with each stoppage of play, you will have a roll to see if that player recovers. If they recover, they can then join the field again. If they don't, they'll be out until the next stoppage of play where they can check again. Then the last result is an injury or a death, and you can see this by the cross or the skull. And this symbol will appear above the head of a unit that is injured or killed when they are knocked down to show you exactly what has happened to them. Also, a text box will show up telling you the extent of their injury or death. If this happens, if an injury or death happens, this player will be moved to this box, and they will not play again throughout the course of play. They will be out for the rest of the game. So that is the more severe of the injuries that can happen. Okay, with that explained, we only have a couple other actions we can do, and those are the limited actions, or actions we can only do once per turn. And these are throwing a blitz, which is moving and blocking, handing off the ball, which is just handing the ball to somebody that's right next to you, or passing the ball, which is a more long-range transfer of the ball. All of those actions can only be done once per turn. So let's show off a blitz really quickly. And again, I'm going to go over this in more detail when I do the blocking video, but just to show you how this works, we'll click on my unit, and I will move here, and then click on my unit. You'll notice that a lightning bolt goes over his head to show that he's blitzing. And then we do the blitz. This character will move to the other opposing player, and then I get to choose which of the dice I want. And this works pretty much the same way as a normal block, but if I do not follow them up, or whether I follow them up or not, any movement points I have left can continue to be used to continue to move. You'll see by the stars that this person is stunned, and we'll take that extra turn to recover. Now let's go over the other actions here. So handing off the ball is pretty simple. You just move over next to another player, and you just click on them, and you will transfer the ball to them. With this transfer, though, there is a check for the player receiving the ball to make sure that they are able to grab a hold of it. If they fail this check, they will drop the ball. This will result in a turnover. So be mindful of that. Passing is works pretty similarly, and we'll show that here in a second, except you don't have to be right next to the player that you're passing to. So let's just show that real quick here. We only have 25 seconds, so we'll do it really quickly. So we click on the player that has the ball, and you'll see all of the players that he can throw to. And how far away they are from him were designated by the little crosshair matched with a color. Because how far away the player is has an effect on how likely the pass will succeed. So let's see this again. We click on them, and if we hover over this player, or just even click on them, we'll see this is a short pass. It has a 67% chance for him to catch it, and a 50% chance that I'll pass it. If I click on this player here, he's even closer. It's a quick pass, so it's a 67% chance that I'll succeed. So let's do that really quickly. And there we go, a pass and a catch. Now, unfortunately, we only have a couple seconds left in this turn, but I've gone over most of the basics of gameplay. So I will try and do a handoff ball here really quickly, but I doubt I'll have time to do it. So we click this player, we move over here. We didn't have enough time. So now our turn is over. We can see our first turn is grayed out. And when it is our turn again, we'll be on turn 2. Right now, the AI player is going ahead and taking their turn as per normal. Now, to explain assists while we wait, just in basic terms, how assists work is whenever a block is thrown, any friendly tackle zones that are touching the player to be blocked will give you a +1 strength bonus. Any opposing players that are touching you with the tackle zone will give the person you're attacking a +1 strength bonus. Now, for them to give you that bonus, they cannot be in any other tackle zones themselves. So, just as a for instance, if this player here was trying to throw a block here, he would get an assist from this unit and this unit. But this unit here would not give an assist to the unit being blocked because he's in a tackle zone of a player that is not involved in the block. That kind of explains assists pretty simply. So let's do a dodge here and then hand off the ball, because those are some things that we haven't done yet. So I'm going to move here, which will require me to do a dodge. And you can even hear the die roll to show that I succeeded. And then I'm going to do a handoff. Now, because I'm doing a handoff, there is no pass roll. I did like I had with the when I was passing it. Just a roll to see if he catches it. So let's do that. He manages to catch it. Now, as we can see here, though, when I do the throw, though, there's a check both for the pass and the catch. If the pass fails, the pass will scatter. It is possible it will scatter back to the player that you intended to pass it to, but it is unlikely. And if the ball does not scatter to a player on your team that then catches it, it will be a turnover. So let's go ahead and complete this pass. And again, we continue to succeed our passes, so we're being pretty lucky. So we haven't yet shown how a reroll works, but this player is now going to run as fast as he can towards the end zone. And I'm going to go for it a couple times here. And right there, he failed his going for it chance. He had an 83% chance to do it, but he failed. So now I have a time limit to decide on whether I want to do a team reroll. I will, of course, do a team reroll. Just going to rewind here and do the roll again. He passes. So that's essentially how a team reroll works, and as well as a failure. So we're going to continue to go for it and risk him falling down. He did. He drops the ball. That results in a turnover. My turn is now over. So that's pretty much the basics of how to play Blood Bowl. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner, signing out. Just for an add-on here, I forgot to mention, how do you score a touchdown? Scoring a touchdown is done by entering this last line of squares in the back here, where it says touchdown repeatedly. That's how you score a touchdown. That is the only way you can score, by the way, and when you do score a touchdown, you only score 1 point. So I just thought it would probably be a good idea for me to explain that really quickly. So as I said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner, signing out.